everyone. This is Dan New School Ring at CFB Ring Zone, and I welcome you to listen and watch my podcast today, which is going to be the inaugural podcast for this great college football season, and I cannot be more excited to be here today. I have to send out thanks to my mentor, Dan Old School Green, who was helping me with the production side, and Tony Cotillo from Heat Ratio Sports Network. And everyone, make sure you subscribe to that network. They have a lot of great content, and I am just happy to be a small part of it. And the newest member focusing on college football. So a little bit about me. I practiced law for 14 years, and for the past 10 years, I've been in business and teaching, but I've always grown up with college football on my mind. Was raised on college football, particularly Penn State and the Big Ten, but I've been a huge college football fan for at least 40 years, if not longer. So I hope that this podcast is knowledgeable. This is meant to create discussion, and there's no right or wrong answers. I'll give my opinions. I welcome anybody who watches this to post their comments, and we can start a chat. So I'm just really looking forward to this and just happy to be a part of it. So that's a little bit about me. Enough about me. We're going to do some segments throughout the course of college football season based on talk about some coaches. We'll talk about some Heisman candidates, talk about some past college football, great game, great moments, past eras, as well as the current state of college football. I'll give some opinion and commentary on the legal aspects as well of the new NIL rulings that just came down about a month ago. Which are really interesting too. So we're going to start the show with some wrap up of the past weekend, which was the first full weekend of college football. My thoughts on some of the games that happened this past weekend, as well as some of the players. So that's how I want to start the show this week, and talk first about just the most impressive team to me by far year over year is Alabama. I don't know how Nick Saban does it. I watched the HBO special with him and Bill Belichick, and just the philosophies that both of them have. But it's a lot harder in college to have continued excellence, to me, than in the pros. So the impressive win that they had over Miami, and they destroyed Miami. That game was not even close, 44-13. It was a lot more lopsided than that. But just to plug and play what he has in his scheme is just incredible to me. And I'd love to hear what other people have to say about that. I think he's by far the best college coach seen. You think about it's almost, I think, 15 years of sustained excellence that he's had. You know, and winning a title at LSU also has been really impressive, what he's done. This kid Bryce Young, we'll talk about a little bit more about him later, but he is the real deal. And the fact that he hadn't even played in a college game before, thrown a pass before Saturday, just shows you how they just turn out talent year after year. Miami's not a bad team. Manny Diaz has done a great job there. They're starting to pick up some recruits that they had lost previously in Florida. They have some really good athletes, and they're going to be good. And they're going to be competitive, but against a team like Alabama, they're not there yet. So talk a little bit more about that later, but to me, they were the most impressive team. Another team I want to talk about a little bit is Cincinnati. So Cincinnati, the new polls just came out. I believe they're 7th or 9th. I'm not sure. I think they're 7th. And Luke Fickell has done a great job there. I'd love to see them play Ohio State every year. I think that would be tremendous for college football. And Luke Fickell, of course, being an OSU alum, bringing Cincinnati to the shoe every year or every other year, and then having Ohio State travel there would be great for the state, great recruiting. And Cincinnati is no joke. Reader, the quarterback, I think he's a pro prospect, and he can be an option threat, and he runs that read option flawlessly. So I really like what he has to offer. Their defense is really good. They have athletes all over the field. And they've kind of been on the fringes for a while now, but Fickell has them ranked, and they are not overrated. So they will give anybody a hard time that they play. So they were really impressive as well. I mean, there's other teams, 4 or 5 teams in the top 20 lost. So that just speaks to the parity of college football. Fresno State gave Oregon all they can handle, and they're no joke either. And, you see it's been a while now that the 85 scholarship limit has been imposed, but you really see so many great players that go to middle schools or group of 5 schools that can really play. You see more of them getting drafted every year, and they give the big boys trouble. So these days in college, there are no easy games. And group 5 teams can give Power 5 teams all they can handle. And that's a lot of times why they're not being scheduled for non-conference games. Some big teams are still taking some cupcakes. I understand that. It's a payday for the smaller teams to go get hammered at Wisconsin or Ohio State or any Georgia. But some of the group of 5 schools will give any of those Power 5 schools trouble. And it's great to see. I think it's great for college football. Kind of something I want to throw out there when you're watching this. I'd like to know what people think about that. And as well as we'll do a little poll question. Would you rather have the same schools every year, like Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, going for a national championship, or would you rather have more parity and see one of these group of 5 schools get into the college football playoff and see schools like Coastal Carolina being ranked and see some smaller schools that don't get the recognition in the pub year after year, maybe every other year, every 2 or 3 years, get highly ranked and have a chance to play in the college football playoff? I like to hear people's opinion on that. I have a pretty strong opinion as well, but I'll hold that off until we get some responses to the question, and we can discuss that further. I think it's a great topic to talk about. So, wanted to bring up one other thing this weekend. A couple devastating injuries. Minnesota, if you guys watched that game, Minnesota hung with Ohio State. Don't think anybody really thought Ohio State was going to lose that game, but Minnesota played tough and they scored 31. So Ohio State's going to have some trouble with their defense, but Minnesota lost Ibrahim for the year. He's out for the year. It's going to be a 4 to 5 month recovery, I believe. I think he broke his tibia. So that's a huge blow for them. They just don't have anybody that can replace him. Tanner Morgan's a good quarterback, but he's not a real difference maker on that team, especially when they're going to be playing some of these top Big Ten defenses. So that's a real loss for Minnesota. Ron Bell also at Michigan out for the year with an ACL. So that's a big loss for them. They've been pretty impressive. Western Michigan isn't all that great, but Michigan, it's nice to see Michigan be relevant again. Hopefully they can be. Harbaugh's been there for 7 years. Maybe they finally have a quarterback in McCarthy. So, we'll see. We'll see if that how that plays out when they play some of the get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule. But it's good for college football to have Michigan be relevant and be good, and maybe give Ohio State some trouble. Last game of the year. So we'll see how that plays out. So this week's games coming up. There's some interesting ones. We'll talk about those a little later in the show. Just saw some of the lines that are interesting that came out, and we'll do an upset pick as well. We'll kind of do that at the end of the show every week. Talk about focus on 3 games and talk about an upset. Okay, so this is the part of the show I want to go to and talk about coaches. I want to call it Sideline Segment and talk about this week Chip Kelly and just kind of discuss what he has meant to college football and his impact at UCLA. So Chip Kelly, an interesting character. I think everybody can agree. Obviously had great success at Oregon, at New Hampshire as the offensive coordinator. He played football there. Had issues at Oregon towards the end of his career and was slapped with a show cause order, which meant he couldn't come back to coach college football once he went to the Eagles for 2 years, I believe. So one of the motivations, I think he knew that there were going to be sanctions coming down. One of his motivations to go to the NFL. $5-6 million a year from Jeffrey Lurie was a big help, obviously. That's motivation enough. But he was not going to be allowed to coach in college after that situation at Oregon. So went to the pros, had a lot of gimmicks, and did some good things. I think everybody can agree with the Eagles with some of the new ideas that he brought to the NFL. But I think in the end it proved to be gimmicky, and he could not relate to pro players. To be a college coach, you have to have a specific personality and a mindset, and to be a pro coach the same way. And that's been proven, by Nick Saban going to the pros, and Pete Carroll had trouble his first stint in the pros. You have to learn how to be a pro coach and handle men, and you're not handling 18 to 22 or 23-year-olds anymore. And I think Chip Kelly had a real issue with that. I'm in Philadelphia, so I got to witness that firsthand. And after maybe the first 8 games of the season, even though the Eagles made the playoffs, everybody pretty much had known that this was not going to work out. So got fired by the Eagles, took some time off, went back to UCLA, and was watching the game against LSU, used some of the same formations he had used at Oregon and with the Eagles. He had an interesting formation where he had a center and 2 guards. Everybody else was flanked out to either side, and stretches out defense, and you can do a lot of things off of that particular formation, which I remember he did in his first game with the Eagles against Washington. And he did it again against LSU, and LSU didn't really know how to handle that and some of the tricks and formations he had put in place. But UCLA, I give him credit. I think they're for real. Could easily win the Pac-12, and they're going to give USC a lot of trouble. Oregon, again, had trouble this weekend with Fresno State, who was no joke. But I think UCLA right now would not surprise me if they won that conference. So Chip Kelly has something there. College kids really relate to him. He's fun. He's fun to play for. I think he's obviously very demanding, but I think players respect what he's done in his career, and he's starting to get the recruits that he needs to play his kind of ball. So he will be interesting to watch. UCLA is a team to watch this year. So I really like to see how Chip Kelly comes through the year and kind of how he evolves over the next few years. So in this sideline segment, we're going to randomly or periodically focus on past coaches too. We can kind of touch on them and their careers. And when we go live, certainly would like to have anybody put up a chat and have me discuss any coaches that they want. We'll see what we can get to. Coach I found really interesting in the past, I just was watching that ESPN College Football 150, which was in 2018, 150 year of college football. And they did a little segment on Bob Devaney from Nebraska. And I just thought it was really interesting how he was ahead of his time back in the 50s and 60s when schools were very focused on the play on the field and not as much training off the field. And Devaney kind of had the foresight to hire a strength coach who started out. He was the very first full-time strength coach in college football. I think he retired about 2 or 3 years ago. But he took the injured players and had them in the weight room, and when they came back, they were bigger, stronger, faster than players who were playing who weren't injured. So he had the foresight to see that, and Tom Osborne was an assistant back then. So when Osborne took over, he continued that mode of training, that method of training for football, specific speed, strength, agility, and translated that to the field. And Nebraska went on to win 2 national titles in the 90s. So that was an interesting look back at Bob Devaney's career. They did a short segment on coaches on that ESPN CFB 150. So Bob Devaney was a name that not a lot of people remember, but was definitely a very good coach and probably one of the top 10 college coaches of all time, in my opinion, for the foresight he had and innovation and just his demeanor as well. I think he was really popular with the players. If anybody disagrees with that or has any other information that I don't know about, please feel free to chime in on that. So we are going to transition from the sideline segment to section I like to call Heisman Hype. We'll talk about a current player who might be for the Heisman, as well as former Heisman winner. And today I would like to focus and talk a little bit about Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker, in my opinion, the best college running back I've ever seen. He and Reggie Bush were the top two that I've ever seen. And I was pretty young when Herschel Walker was around, but I remember him well. And I just remember seeing him live trucking the Tennessee defensive back on his way to a touchdown. And to come in as a freshman, what he did. And to, for 3 years to basically dominate college football. It doesn't happen today. That's why it was such an anomaly that he was able to do that. He was able to do that. He was bigger, stronger, and faster than defensive linemen that were trying to tackle him. Probably didn't translate as well to the pro game as you would have thought, but he did. Was able to restock the Dallas Cowboys when they traded him to Minnesota for, I think it was a 11th pick over the course of 2 or 3 years. So what he did at Georgia and Vince Dooley to give them the national championship in 1980 was pretty tremendous. It was 81. I'm dating myself. But then to have them lose to Penn State in the Sugar Bowl in 1983 to give Penn State the national championship. They were the only school I really saw when he was playing that was able to kind of contain him. I don't think he could run longer than 11 yards that whole game in the Sugar Bowl. So Herschel Walker was a player that I think most people would agree was probably the greatest college running back over the course of his 3-year career in college that he led the country in rushing. And was just a freak of nature, and still is. If you see him now, he's actually running for Senate in Georgia. He's exploring a run for Senate, and he's still that popular. He's a really good guy. He was a good guy off the field, did a lot of great things, very philanthropic, and a kind of a guy you root for. And his training regimen was never lift a weight. He did 500 push-ups, 500 sit-ups every day. I think he did some squats, some bodyweight squats. So he was not a weight room wonder. He was just a physical marvel that was able to show in college that hard work, determination, and obviously natural ability and talent go a long way. And later on in his after his football career, he was I think he made it to the U.S. bobsled team. I think in the early 2000s, he was on the U.S. bobsled team. So pretty remarkable guy and a good guy to spotlight as we lead off Heisman Hype is Herschel Walker. So the guy I'm looking at now, as I mentioned earlier, is Bryce Young. When you're the quarterback for Alabama, you're always going to have eyes on you. And Bryce Young has that. He has charisma. He has talent, obviously. And Bryce Young is a guy that is probably going to be, I think he's only a sophomore. So this year and next year, then he'll be in the pros. But he's a prototypical modern-day quarterback who can move, who can throw on the run, who's got a cannon for an arm. He's got great field vision, got great agility. He's got poise above all, and he's extremely bright. And he understands that offense, and he guided that offense like a conductor on Saturday night and did everything Nick Saban wanted him to do. 377 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. And that's Alabama. is back to what we're talking about, Alabama. I mean, they're a plug-and-play program. You look at the talent they lost, and to be number one in the country again, and more impressive to me is that look at the schools that were below them that lost so much talent. Look at Clemson. Clemson couldn't score. Georgia couldn't score. All right, they're both good defenses, and they both lost great players. Look at Ohio State. Ohio State struggled at times. They lost great players. Alabama doesn't struggle. Yeah, they might slip up here and there. They plug players in that are as good or better than the players they lost before, and they lost a Heisman Trophy winner to the pros. So that's just me. Goes to coaching. And look, Dabo Swinney's a great coach. Kirby Smart's a great coach, and Ryan Day is a great coach. It doesn't happen overnight for them. You have things you need to iron out when you're putting new players in, and you have games that you need to get through where you're going to struggle sometimes, and you're going to make mistakes, and your kids are going to trip up, and they have to put in game situations to feel like they are in a real college football game. It's not a scrimmage anymore. Alabama, it seems their players all have poise. They just go in, they do their job, they run over teams, they're not showy. They have nothing to prove other than that they're the best team in college football every year. I don't know if that's good or bad for college football. We talked about that there, and I'd like to people to address. If you want to see Alabama every single year in the college football playoff, does it get boring or is it pretty incredible? So people will disagree about that. To me, that particular program in that instance is pretty incredible what they can do. And I just think that it's a credit to Nick Saban and the coaching staff and the coaches that he's spawned, like Kirby Smart, that go to other programs and they're great, but they still can't beat him. So consider the coaches he loses every year, the person he loses every year. He has almost, not the top recruiting class, one of the top, and they're in the top 5 almost every year. This year so far, I think they were like 15th, but they only have signed 14 players. So the December signing day is still a ways off. So they'll be in the top 5 again. But I just think in their case, it's whether they're in the championship or they're in the college football playoff, just the level of consistent excellence that they bring is to me just one of the most amazing things I've seen in over 40 years of watching and following college football. So I like it. I think you say until somebody can knock them off and figure out a way to beat them, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. And they should. So that's my opinion on Alabama. Other people might have different opinions, but I think that's what's great about college football is that you have a team like that kind of everybody can shoot for. And they're going to trip up. Once in a while, they're going to trip up. But that conference with that schedule and all the teams that are so good every year that they have to play and to still be in the position that they're in is to me incredible. So that's all I'm going to say about Alabama and Bryce Young. But he's one to watch this year, and I think his odds of winning were cut in half after Saturday. I think he was like 1,400. It was plus 1,400. And now it's like plus 700 for him to win the Heisman. So there's just nobody else, I don't think, out there right now that can compete with that and with Alabama and what they do consistently week after week. So now let's look at some of the games coming up next week. Polls just came out today. They're number 1, Alabama. Georgia's number 2. I believe Ohio State is 3. One of the big jumps with Penn State, went from 19 to 11, and their win was really impressive as well. I'll talk more about them later on or next week. So I don't want to get too much into Penn State, but let's talk about some of the games this week. 3 games I want to focus on. The first is Rutgers-Syracuse, which will be an interesting game. Rutgers, which was a joke of college football years ago, not too many years ago, before Greg Schiano got there. They went through 3 or 4 coaches and couldn't get anything right. And they are no joke. All right, Temple might not be very good. Rutgers put up 61 on them. So Rutgers is not a joke. And Syracuse is kind of – they had a good year a couple years ago with Dino Babers. They can't recruit. So right now that's only a 2-point line. I expect that to go up, even though Rutgers is on the road. So I think it's going to be 4 or 5 by the time the game comes around. And I think Rutgers is going to win that game relatively easily. And they're going to win some games in the Big Ten. It would not surprise me if they go 3-5 in the conference, or maybe even 500. So they're an up-and-coming team. Now they're in the Big Ten East, which means they're probably going to lose to Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State every year. But there's some teams in the crossover games that they have a chance to win. They could be better than Maryland. They could beat Michigan State, which also look pretty good against Northwestern. But Rutgers is a team to watch. So I'll be interested to see what they do this year. Another game I want to look at is Nebraska. I'll hold off on that one. Miami and Appalachian State. Miami obviously got whooped on Saturday. That's only an 8-point line as well. I think that line's telling me something. App State is a decent group of 5 school that comes up with an upset once in a while. They'll play hard. I think Miami will probably win that game, but that'll be an interesting one to watch. I'd like to see how Derek King responds and comes back after the Alabama game. I think Miami will have that team ready to play. I don't think they're going to overlook anybody. I don't think they're good enough to overlook anybody. And that's going to be one that it's going to be interesting to watch. So 8-point line right now. If it goes down anymore, then I would start to get worried. I expect that line to probably go up a little bit. And we'll see how that game goes. That's one to watch. That'll be interesting. USC and Stanford. That'll be a really interesting game. Late on Saturday night on the West Coast at USC at the Coliseum. At the Coliseum. So USC, I'm really like Slovis. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a pro player. I think he's a really good college quarterback. I don't know if he has the skills to play in the pros. I don't know that he processes information quickly enough. He makes some really, really questionable decisions. But Clay Helton's fighting for his job. He's been on the hot seat for 3 years. So I expect USC to win. That's a 17.5-point line. Stanford's kind of been hanging on the fringes of relevancy now for a few years. I think they're going to play hard. I think they could easily cover, but I think USC is going to win. They're going to have trouble. I'm not convinced, not sold on USC yet as a Pac-10 favorite. I know some of the ESPN experts like USC, and I don't know if it's the brand or it's what they've done in the past. They really haven't impressed me at all the past couple of years, and they lose a lot of games they should win. But I think they're fighting for Clay Helton's job, and if he doesn't have a good year this year and win at least 9 games, I think he's out. So I'll be interested to see that game and see how they respond and play. So upset pick this week, Nebraska and Buffalo. Real interesting game. So Buffalo, Lance Leipold was their coach for a long time and did a great job there. And he left to go to Kansas for some reason, which is the worst job in college football by far. We all know why he left. Money was one. He's going to obviously a big conference as well, going to the Big 12, but he has no shot at winning. I think he has a 6-year contract, which he should have, because he will, if he wins 4 games over the next 2 years, I'll be shocked. They have no talent. They're terrible. Buffalo has talent, and they compete. Nebraska, I think they've given up on Scott Frost. I don't know why. I think Scott Frost is a good coach. I think he was obviously great at UCF. I just don't know what the problem is. I watch a lot of Big Ten football. I watch a lot of Big Ten Network and commentators on there, and something's missing. Something's wrong at Nebraska. They came back against Illinois. They lost 30-22 in the first week. Okay. Illinois is going to be a better team with Brett Bielema. But Scott Frost just I don't play hard for him. I don't know what it is. I don't think Martinez is the answer at quarterback, and they've had him there for what seems like 10 years already. So I expect Buffalo to come out and beat Nebraska. And Buffalo's going to play with nothing to lose. It's at Nebraska. I'm not convinced that Nebraska's back. I just think they need a whole new culture there. I don't know, and I don't get it, because Scott Frost is a Nebraska guy, and he's the guy that they wanted and they targeted. And I thought the first couple of years he would be the guy to bring Nebraska back. And look, it's good, again, good for college football if Nebraska is good. They just can't get good. They just don't have players. Their defense is terrible. They can't tackle anybody. They're not physical at all. You get past their defensive line, the linebackers get blocked very easily, and the defensive backs can't run. And when you have linebackers that can't get off blocks and D-backs that can't run and aren't athletic, you're in big trouble. And that's the way Nebraska's been for 2 years. So that, for me, this week is the upset pick, Buffalo over Nebraska. I saw that stood out to me right away when I looked at that game for this week. So anyway, this has been great. I want to end my show, the first inaugural podcast, and I'm sorry for any glitches and anything else that had happened. The show, it's a work in progress still. And, Dan Old School Green's helping me with production, and we're going to straighten out any issues that we have. But I wanted to get the first podcast out of the way. I'm a novice at this. This is my first time doing this. So I apologize if there's anything on here that didn't come across exactly the way you would expect in a podcast, but we're going to keep working at it and getting better. I wanted to touch on one issue before we go. And I want to mention before we do that to make sure you subscribe to Heat Ratio Sports, which is the network that I'm proud to be a part of on YouTube. And you can follow at Heat Ratio Sports as well and subscribe to that network on YouTube. They're on Twitter. I'm at CFB Ring Zone on Twitter. You can feel free to reach out to me as well at any time with any comments. And whole podcast is meant to encourage discussion and debate, friendly debate between myself and any followers and anyone that I'm following as well. So with that said, the last thing I want to touch on really briefly is the new ruling that came down on NIL, name, image, likeness for college players. As someone who has practiced law before, I can give maybe a little bit more insight into this and just a brief background. And this is going to be a continuing discussion because this is an issue that's going to be shaping college athletics for the next couple of years. And it already has in some ways. So very briefly, what that was a suit brought by college players against universities to have them be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. And people have wildly varying opinions on this. So a lot of people think that colleges offer scholarships, players go to college for free, they get some other benefits, they get food money, they get travel money, they get clothing, they get books. That's all included in their scholarship, as well as some other things that the NCAA probably doesn't know about or likes to look the other way about. But we all know that happen. As opposed to getting compensated for their name, image, and likeness when they're bringing in millions to the university, especially a player like Mackenzie Milton and De'Ara King, who joined up together to co-found a company that basically markets their name, image, and likeness in South Florida because they are the quarterbacks for Florida State and Miami. And they can sponsor car dealerships, clothing, whatever they want, and get compensated for that, whereas before you couldn't, technically. So Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional to not allow players to trade on their name, image, and likeness and be compensated for that. So a lot of college players now have started to be able to market themselves as entities, as brands. Really interesting idea. It's been talked about for years. It's the reason why EA Sports stopped making college football. So EA 2014, I believe, was the last, college football 2014 was the last video game that highlighted college football because of that issue and players wanting to be compensated directly for their name and their image and likeness. So now that issue is resolved, at least for the time being, I think we'll see an EA Sports 22 college football game, which will be exciting for all the gamers out there. And this is going to be an ongoing and evolving issue. This just came down in July, I believe, or early August, so right before the college football season. It'll explode in the college basketball season in the fall and the spring. But I think everybody can agree that college football is the money-driving machine of college athletics. So this is where that's going to be really interesting and really fascinating to watch over the next couple of years. I'm for it. I think players should be able to capitalize on that. Yes, they get benefits by getting free education, getting other benefits as well, getting exposure. A lot of college programs are training grounds for the NFL, but very few of these guys will actually make it to the NFL and make a significant amount of money. So while they're in college, that is part of their earning potential. And other students that aren't athletes can go out while they're a student and make money, whether they're doing a podcast, whether they're doing graphic design, web graphics, anything that they want, they're able to do that. And these players have a unique talent, and they would be allowed to treat on that. There's a very compelling argument for the other side too, saying they get enough by getting scholarship money and getting free education, and I understand that too. And for a time I thought that. I don't feel like that anymore. There's too much money involved, and these players that bring all this acclaim and exposure to the colleges that they represent should be able to share in that. And all you need to do is look at Clemson over the past couple of years, their enrollment and the competitiveness to get in there since they won the national championship in 2016, 50% higher than it was before. And that's all you really need to know on how valuable college football brand is to these schools and these players are to these schools. So that's my commentary for today. And with that, I hope you all enjoyed this inaugural podcast of CFB Ring Zone. I really enjoy doing this. This is going to be a weekly program. We hope to have some live programs as well coming up in the very near future. And again, I want to thank Tony and He Ratio Sports Network for allowing me to do this, and my mentor who's behind the scenes, Dan Old School Green. And forward to talking with you all again next week. We'll go over the games previously. We'll preview some of the games for the coming week, and we'll do some new segments on the Sideline Segment as well as Heisman Hype. As we get along further in the show, we'll have some guests and we'll add some things. We'll have some more graphics. But as I said, this is an inaugural event that I'm very pleased and happy to be able to bring you. So everybody take care, have a great week, and look forward to the games starting on Thursday night into Saturday. And we have the first week of pro football coming up as well, which should be exciting for everybody too. So this is Dan signing off. Everybody have a great week. I'll see you next time.